Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please do be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, Podbean, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from Minnesota. It's D C Spaar, and she's here to celebrate PJ's Perplexing Predicament. Before we invite DC into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by George J. and the Miserable Monday, written and illustrated by Savan Hong. This is a really, really great book, and it reminds us that Mondays can be hard for everyone, even little kids. George J. and the Miserable Monday is an instructional story that's really fun that you can share with young learners who worry about going to school, struggle with change, and are learning how to be flexible. I know some grown-ups who can use this book. Savan Hong authors and illustrates the best-selling children's book series, The Super Fun Day Books. And these books, in addition to George J., they include Benny J. and the Horrible Halloween, Emily D. and the Fearful First Day. Her books focus on neurodiverse children who overcome their challenges with perseverance and bravery. Each book is structured like a social story, has simple illustrations to help keep a focus on the story, dyslexic-friendly font, and is available as audiobooks to support all kinds of learners. Check it out today. It's really a great series, and especially check out George J. and the Miserable Monday by Savan Hong. Joining us right now from the beautiful state of Minnesota, our guest today is here to celebrate her beautiful picture book. It's called PJ's Perplexing Predicament. Please welcome to the show, D C Spaar. Hey, DC, how are you?
Thank you. I'm pretty good. It's a little chilly over here, but I'm doing good.
It's Minnesota. It's chilly in July.
Oh, you would think. It's downright minus degrees, so it's okay, though. We have, really sturdy blood, they say, so.
Absolutely. So tell us, I've had a couple of PJ predicaments, but it always involved me getting locked out of my hotel room. I have a feeling that's a completely different situation.
Yes. So PJ is Papa John. My dad was too young when he became a grandpa, so he was like, I'm not being Papa. Papa's in Reading, Massachusetts. And I was like, okay. So he became PJ, and we are his caretakers, my husband and I, because PJ has Alzheimer's. So it is it's a made-up story. We haven't lost him yet. So, but in the book, PJ does go missing, and the spy team or the detective team, Logan and Emily, have to find him. It's their most important case.
Yeah. It sounds like a really fun way to address a really hard topic to talk about.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I found when I was trying to explain to my friends' kids why we had to move in with my folks. They're like, but you have your own house. Kids, they're very literal. And so I was kind of like, oh, if I'm trying to explain it to these kids, and my friends were like, I don't know, you go at it. I figured, this conversation must be difficult all over the place. And it's getting to be where so many of our parents are experiencing this, that's what pushed me to create a book that just opened that communication.
It's an incredibly difficult subject to talk about, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, that oftentimes exhibits with dementia. Yep. We had to have this conversation with my kids when my mom's Parkinson's really developed into dementia, and my kids were in high school, and it was difficult for them to talk about it. And I imagine, for even younger kids, it must be. I mean, I have a hard time understanding it. You know, so,
even as kids of the parents, it's like, oh, what? We can't do anything in this day and age, And so it is, and then try and explain that to a 9-year-old, that something's going on with Grandpa's brain.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
I think we had a lot of really hard conversations with my mom and family, but the hardest, there are two real hard ones. One was, my daughter changed the most from being a little girl and then, when my mom started getting dementia, she was now a teenager. So there was a dramatic change. And she was the first one that my mom forgot. Oh. And the day that we realized that was a really hard day. My daughter sat down with me and said, Grammy didn't know who I was today. But the other really difficult conversation was with my mom and the neurologist who said, this is it. My mom said, so what can we do? And sorry, there's nothing we can do. It's devastating.
It is. And as, once you become a parent, then you're all about doing something. Okay, we've got this disease, we've got this, we're going to do something about it. And then when you're told, well, as of yet, there's not a cure. And you're like, what? Or well, what about treatments? What about this? Well, you can eat better. There's things, to prolong it, but especially with Alzheimer's, the diagnosis is your brain is actually dying, sooner than it should. Like, when a normal person dies, their brain is intact, their cells. Your brain will actually get small enough that it forgets how to breathe, how to do the actual main functions of the main organs. And that was hard. That's hard to even, I think, as the sandwich generation, to acknowledge in your parents that something's going on, and then you have to broach the subject with them. It's like, it took a while, because I noticed with my dad years before we finally convinced him to go see a neurologist. And then again, I have a teenager, and he's living with all of us. We're one big happy family out here, to explain to him, especially teenagers, sometimes they have these, little blinders on where it's all about their life. And then to be like, no, you're going to have to help out. You're going to have to be patient and yet still be respectful. And, there's all these just layers of conversations that we've had to do. And I wanted it to be talked about, because what I also found in the Alzheimer's and dementia community is people don't want to talk about it. Especially, if one of their family members has it, they don't really they're like, oh, well, they have memory issues. And I was like, no, because when you talk about it, when you get it out in the open, then you can really tackle it as a team. And you can now shift your thinking as, okay, it is what it is. Let's start making sure we have great memories. Because if you don't talk about it, then you don't acknowledge it, then you may miss some awesome memories that you could have had if it had been acknowledged.
Right. And there's a lot of behaviors. Not only is it hard for kids to understand that, my grandmother doesn't remember, my grandfather doesn't remember, he can't drive anymore. Why can't he? But there's also, the folks who are suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, they get angry. They have these moments where they realize that they're declining, and like all of us, they get frustrated, they get angry, and it comes out sometimes inappropriately, and there's some inappropriate comments that they make, and you have to sit down with your kids and help them understand that this is part, Grammy's not really angry at you
Right.
PJ's not really angry at you. He's angry at being sick. He's angry at Alzheimer's.
Yes, and I think that what changed in our family dynamics is the earlier we talked about it and just said, okay, this is what we're going to expect. These are our case studies, and this is what can happen. Now, how do we go about that? We actually end up heading off a lot of that anger. And in the book, actually, in the back of the book, I put things that you can, how to talk to someone with dementia. Because it's simple things that can trigger them, and then they get mad, you know. And so instead of being like, well, don't you remember? And it's a simple, I say it still. And, I try and say, oh, remember when we went to the store yesterday and we saw blah, 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 blah. And then you just go on with what you're trying to get them to remember, right? But it's in a very different way that they don't feel their defenses don't come up. And if we can educate our kids and ourselves, I tell you, it has made the world of difference. Before we moved in and before I started really researching, it was a lot of angry moments and a lot of even tears, And then when we started implementing and just talking about it and saying, Dad, it's a brain disease, and when you sneak out to drive, or when you do things, it hurts me. It hurts my feelings. It makes it so much harder. And to be that honest, but yet, again, that acknowledging, then it totally changed him. Then the parent came back into him, and he was like, I'm sorry, And to see that was like, okay, we got through, And that's what I really want to bring to families that are in the same situation, that there is a way to still battle this with grace and it not be so damaging, I guess, like we're trying to keep the relationships intact until the end, and so a lot of the memories that my son has been able to have, he never would have. We're busy people, right? We're like, and he wouldn't have had this opportunity to, and we had to have that conversation of, you still need to show respect. Just because they can't, do certain things or whatever, it is still your grandfather. He still, has been on this earth way longer than you, and we need to show him respect as that.
Yeah.
So it's been a big eye-opener for me, and I'm hoping that with the book, parents can kind of start that conversation and start prepping the kids, because now he's a great helper. If I'm not here and I'm like, okay, now they need their medicine, and, just remember, he goes up, he's like, hey, PJ, you take your medicine yet? He's like, oh, right. And it just, kids love to be helpers, right? And that's exactly what's been, we're a team of caregivers now, instead of just me trying to do it all. Because that never works very well, right? Yes.
And that helping, I think, is really, really important. My niece that I adore and have mentioned many times, her grandmother is suffering from Alzheimer's, and she really loves, when we go out, she'll pick up a newspaper. I think my grandmother would like this. We'll make word finds together. My grandmother, I want to do puzzles with her, and so we'll find things, and she, really looks forward to being able to spend time and to help and to, she realizes that it's going to progress, but she also understands that there are some little things I can do to kind of slow down that progression.
Right.
And so I think when we bring our kids into it, and, help them understand what's going on, and also empower them to know that there are ways that you can help with this. You don't have to feel helpless.
Right, or scared. A lot of kids are like, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to say the wrong thing and set them off. And that's where, okay, I'm going to give you the tools then to be my little junior caregiver. There's a cute little, on Instagram, I can't remember now the name. It's Chris and her mom or her grandmother, but she said that her niece too is the best junior caregiver. Because once they brought her into that and said, okay, we're going to have to help grandma tie her shoes and help her get dressed, but it's going to be fun. It's all in the attitude, and she loves it. She loves doing that, and she wants to go visit instead of being like, they're different now, and even to the point where maybe they don't know me, well, you know what, you're my junior caregiver, and so this is our job. The biggest thing is to make them happy and to help them be safe. That's our job. And deep down inside, they know us and they love us. It just isn't getting to the brain. The heart isn't getting to the brain. And so when they kind of figure that, it's like, okay. And it allows them to, okay, I know what to expect, and I'm going to this is my job, and it just goes so much better.
Yeah. The other thing I think, when we involve our kids and we talk to our kids and they see us helping and caring, I think it helps them understand that they're not going to be thrown away.
Right.
We're demonstrating that, hey, this is a person that we love, and we need to care for them. And that's what family is. We're here for each other. It might be inconvenient at the moment, and it might be inconvenient for a bunch of years, but that's okay, because, and that PJ would have done that for you.
Exactly.
And we do that for you, and I'm counting on you doing that for me.
Exactly. And I tell them, I'm like, when sometimes they're like, oh, why do we have to do this or whatever, I look at them and I'm like, do you realize how much PJ and Nanny gave up to give us as much as they could? I'm like, and we do the same for you kids. And that's how it works. We take care of each other. If you're in trouble, you know that all of us, we're right there. This is part of that. And I think that sense of having people behind you with these kids, with the bullying, with all the issues that teenagers have, and they're real issues. Like, I would not want to be a teenager right now. But having that team behind them, I think also helps their mental wellness of, yeah, maybe something's happened or whatever, but I've got this family that wants the best for me because they see all the caring. And so they feel a little more like they can maybe talk about it, or they just know that they have a safe place to go to. And I think it's helped. And, of course, I'm always checking in with my kids, what's going on, things like that. But I do think, too, them seeing that I, as an adult, still will listen to my dad and mom and, things like that has made an impression. And he'll even throw it when I am not. He's like, well, this is what you said to Nanny. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, I was wrong. You still have to do what I say. But it really helps to make them see, too, that we're human and we will make mistakes, but we're still, like you said, family. And that in this day and age is so important. The time that we had to have a tough conversation with my dad and I teared up, I wrote an article because I was like, do we let them see us tear up? And do we let our kids see us cry sometimes? And I came to the conclusion of yes, because sometimes our kids think that nothing can touch us. We don't realize it, but they're like, oh, well, whatever I do isn't going to affect you. Yeah, you may get mad. And it's like, no. There's a difference between mad and sad. And your actions can make me sad. And just like I kind of had to remind PJ, his actions can make me sad. And vice versa. Then it's a whole thing of the relative, like what I do is all relative as far as how it's going to affect the other person. It's not just all about me. And to the kids to see that, and just any family member really, that your words and your actions, they affect other people. I think that it can make a person a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I oftentimes when I'm doing these interviews, I have these crazy thoughts. And one of the thoughts when we're talking about family is maybe this is God's way or nature's way of reminding us that we're supposed to be part of a human family. Mm-hmm. And we're supposed to be there together. And that's why I think that PJ's Perplexing Predicament would be a great book. Obviously, it would be a great book for any family dealing with this. But I think it's also just as important for families that aren't dealing with it, for families, for the classmates of your kids, for those families to sit down and read this book together and to say, you know what, DC's kids, your classmates, this is what their grandfather is going through. This is what they're going through with their grandfather. How would you feel? What can we do to help them? What can we do to support them?
Exactly. And that's one of the things in the back. I have discussion questions. And that is exactly because when we think about it, these kids, these classmates of my kids, they're going to be the next generation's lawyers, dentists, doctors, waitresses, cooks. I mean, go on and on, right? So to read this with everyone will enable them then to get a little insight onto what other families are going through, and then they, in their job, can be better at their job. There's a big Alzheimer's and dementia and patients and families, they like to give little business cards when we go out to eat. And it just says, my family member has Alzheimer's or dementia, so just please be patient. It changes their attitude. Because now, instead of a grumpy old man that can't make up his mind, or, that is just rude, whatever, now they understand and they're trying better. Mm-hmm. And that's what I, again, want is that, and I have to, I'm a hairdresser by trade. Again, when I do people that I know are dealing with dementia, then I change a little bit of how I do and how I talk to help them be more comfortable. And again, the family's like, thank you so much. Because, if you don't have any clue how to act or never have even talked about it, it can make that person's day miserable and that family's day miserable. So I do think it's important for all of us. I didn't know, really. I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but not until it impacted me. Yeah. And I feel bad now looking back, what could I have done? Well, I'm trying to do it now, so.
Yeah. I wish I had some of those cards, not so much when we went out to dinner, but when we went to see doctors. Because that was the biggest, that was the biggest.
ER visits, the worst. The worst.
That's a whole nother podcast, and we'll.
Let me tell you.
Yes. Anybody who has an aging parent, and you're taking care of them, be prepared to be very surprised at how disrespected you will feel in some medical offices. It's very surprising. That was the last place I would have thought.
I know. You're like, don't they teach you this?
Well, I know people. First, before I ask you where we can go, so you shared with us that you're a hairdresser by trade. Imagining, I don't know, when you were cutting folks' hair and styling them and making them look fresh and fabulous, were you thinking in the back of your mind, I want to put down the comb and become a children's author?
I actually, as a kid, I love reading and I loved writing, but you don't make much money at it unless you're John Grisham, right? So I became a hairdresser, and I still had all these stories in my head. And I actually, my very first story about Logan Scott and his secret task force, I wrote when my son was 4, so about 13 years ago. And I just, you're like, oh, whatever. You send it off. You get the no. And then you just put it in a drawer. And then when the pandemic hit, this was my silver lining that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Mm-hmm. Salons are closed. Can't do anything. And once I did the first book and then the second, and then we were thrown into caregiving, I was like, hey, I really like this. And maybe I can make a difference while I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. So each book has a little underlying just tip in life. One of them is just about friends, how you fight and you make up and you're still friends, things like that. And so then I was like, I really like this. So I still do hair on the side, but it's kind of, I know we would never want a pandemic, but since it did come, it made me do something that I probably never would have otherwise.
Well, it's a great time to start looking for silver linings through this pandemic, and that certainly is a silver lining. DC, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about PJ's Perplexing Predicament and find out more about you.
Well, my website, DC Spaar with 2 A's, books.com, so DCSPAARBOOKS.com, is my personal website. I love talking with folks, and I do a lot of giveaways and so forth. So that's the best place to keep track of what's coming new. My books are on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and the PJ's Perplexing Predicament got published by Ingram Sparks, and so it's in the bookstores and so forth. But the best bet is probably my website, and because I do love to send a little note with those that go there and purchase it on the website, just to show my appreciation.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking about some hard subjects. We've been speaking with the author of PJ's Perplexing Predicament. Easy for me to say. I've been speaking about PJ's Perplexing Predicament with the author, DC Spaar. Hey, DC, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be taking off with Julie Whitney. She's our next guest. She'll be here to celebrate Astra, the Lonely Airplane. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic book, please do check out our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on that Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down to find out how you can be a guest on this podcast. You can also find out about our Certified Great Read program. If our panel believes that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read, and folks will know that your book is worthy of their consideration. And you can also find out about our monthly promotion program. This is an exception program we are so excited about. We will celebrate your book for a month through commercials on the podcast, through messages to our 66,000 social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. The billboards are in Boston, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Albany, New York, Toledo, Ohio. A lot of folks going to be seeing your book. Check it out today, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page and scroll on down. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, DC Spaar. Please be sure to check out PJ's Perplexing Predicament. Also want to thank our sponsor, George J. and the Miserable Monday by Savan Hong. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. You're amazing. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for telling your friends and family about us. But most of all, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.